I became a historian because I was disillusioned with science. So I was out my summer after my freshman year at Columbia. I had an internship at the National Institutes of Health where we were supposed to do research on drug abuse, and instead what we did research on was homeless people that they locked up on a ward in East Baltimore. As a Baltimorean, I was very excited to combine my interest in science with helping people. And what I found out was that we were actually being sponsored by large corporations to develop tests on people who had very few options available to them. We offered them lots of money. We paid them about $3,000 or $4,000 for about 6 weeks of internment, but they had no choice and couldn't leave. And when I came back to Columbia in the fall, I decided that I didn't really think science was what I cared about as much anymore, that behind all the molecules and math, there was another world, a world of power that money could imprison people voluntarily in. Anyway, so I took my very first history class with Elizabeth Blackmar, the history of women since 1500, and I was dazzled by the kinds of questions they'd asked, and that's how I became a historian. Well, I come from a working class background. My dad was an exterminator with precarious work, and my mother was a union healthcare worker. And so I was always interested in the meanings of work and inequalities within capitalism. And so as an undergraduate, I took a lot of labor history classes. I took one class called the History of Capitalism. It was just me and 4 people. It was all about 15th century Holland, which is wonderful, with Wim Smit. But I thought of myself as a labor historian, and I wrote my senior thesis on an anarcho-syndicalist movement around consumption in 1919 called the No Beer, No Work movement. That called for a general strike in the event of prohibition being passed. It turned out that strike did not happen, but it was really fun. It was sort of cultural and political economy. And I went to graduate school. I had a Fulbright to do Canadian labor history, which I did for a year, and then went to graduate school to study labor history. And once I started getting into it, I slowly backed into becoming a business historian and financial historian, because I realized that many of the questions I had about working class life were really questions about working class finance and inequality. And so I began to study the history of debt as a way to understand that. And I think that to do labor history, understand the world of working people, is to study the world of capitalism around them. So at the time, it was sort of labor historians weren't really doing that. And so I think now, for a younger generation of historians or graduate students, it seems like a natural fit. But at the time, it was sort of a strange thing. And so as Kim Phillips Fine has written, I think that in another generation, I just would have been a labor historian, but now I'm a historian of capitalism. Although my new project is all about labor history, so I think we're going to start seeing more of that in the future.